It's the spooky season, and even though my hair is already scary by itself, I do believe that I should come up with some spooky content. And for that reason, but not only for that reason, but also because I really enjoy the book that I'm going to talk about today, I decided to do a review for Spooky Book. Hello beautiful bookworms, my name is Katarina and welcome to my channel, and today I am going to be doing a book review for you guys, which I do believe I haven't done in a while, and it's always exciting. As you know, I don't normally review all of the books that I read. I talk about them a little bit in my wrap-ups for the months, but I do believe that there are some books that have to be talked about, and this one is one of those. Not only does it have to do with the spooky season, since it is actually a horror book, but also because it was one of my favorite reads of the year. I still am not sure if it was the favorite read of the year, particularly because this author is coming out with a new book this year as well, and so there's going to be a conflict of interest in there, but it is on my top reads of the year. And so for that reason, and because I wanted to get a little bit spooky, even though the weather is actually really sunny and I'm on my t-shirt, but whatever, I am going to be reviewing RYE by Gavin Gardner. And so join me in this horrific review. So as per usual, all of my reviews are spoiler-free unless stated otherwise, and that will be exactly the same for this one. So firstly, let me talk about the basic premise of this book. The main character of the book is called Renata, and she is a novelist. She writes romance novels, but she has a little bit of a disturbing past with some traumas centering around her family and her childhood. And I might warn you that there is trigger warnings for domestic violence, childhood abuse, trauma, and other unpleasantries. Please inform yourself of the trigger warnings and the triggers present in this book before reading it, since it's a little bit strong. If you want, you can go check my Goodreads review where I state some of those. I'm not going to state a lot in this just for spoiler's sake, but there are some, so pay attention to that. And this is no spoiler, but our Renata is on the brink of suicide. She wants to kill herself to end it all because she has no money, she can't write anymore, and so she is just like, okay, so I'm gonna off myself then. Which I know it's very strange to be stating this like this, but for her it does seem like the only option. However, one day she receives the news that her mother was murdered. And she has always loved her mother, and because of that, she decides to come home and check up on her father and see who killed her mother and what is going on. And in the process, she learns that her mother was murdered in a way that was stated in a book by this horror author, and troubles ensue. So some of the thematics of the book go around, of course, family, also some religion aspects, and that small town vibe that you sometimes feel in horror books, that people know what every single one of them has done, but nobody talks about that. And so throughout this book, we have a very deeply traumatized character, which I really enjoy the way that she was written, because you could empathize with everything that happened to her, even though you could or could not agree with the decisions that she made later on throughout the story. But you could understand where she was coming from, since you have some past-present intricacies where you just see the things that happened to make her who she is and how she got there. And then you have the actual present story, which I also thought it was a genius narration style, since of course you would have to find some of the situations that she went through in a way, and the way that Gavin did it in the book was extremely well paced and well thought out. He gave you little clues for stuff that happened, but not as much that you couldn't enjoy the story because you knew everything right away. I actually guessed one of the things in the story, but the ending of the story, I was not prepared for where that was going, and so it was delightful to see the clues of everything already set in place, but the pacing just diluting and being fast, but also slow enough for you to get on with it. And it was just incredible. It's an incredible writing style. So even though this is very much a horror story, a heavy story that deals with all of the psyche of our main character and of the people surrounding her, this also has a tiny bit of mystery, since there was a murder and you do want to discover who did it. But that it's not the main part of the story. This is very much a psychological horror, which for me is one of the best types of horror ever in existence. I do like a lot of horror subtypes, but I do think that psychological horror is one of the best, since it brings forth the possibility of actually trying to empathize and understand our characters and to actually try to view things from their points of view, which we did in RYE. I was able to do it, and I know that other people that read it were able to do it, and so it makes you feel even strongly every single thing that is happening because you are so inside of your main character's psyche that you're just going on a journey with her, and on that journey you yourself are being traumatized all over again by everything that is happening to her and how her life is just developing in front of you. And I think that making you feel stressed or anxious or anything really is a gift that few writers have, and that Gavin for sure has. Particularly for me, I could empathize with the thought process of this character, since I do have generalized anxiety disorder. I don't have such a traumatic childhood, thank the Lords, but I could empathize with all of the stress of certain feelings and how her thought process was always very fast, but at the same time incredibly slow, if you know what I mean. And for that reason alone, it was stressful for me to actually pick up and read the book, but in a good way, because I wanted to know, I wanted to feel, I wanted to understand, since I could empathize with this. And I think that's what makes this book incredible, is that you want to know, you want to read. There wasn't a time that I didn't want to turn the page. I wanted to know more. I wanted to discover and feel and understand. One of the great things as well that psychological horror books can make you do is have actual discussions about actual topics, which I do believe that RYE is also amazing for that one. You have a lot of discussions that you can have, you have a lot of questions that you can pull through, and having people that actually read the same book as you can talk about them and enjoy it even further. However, and this is a warning for you if you don't like to read horror stories, there are also terrifying and very, very gory descriptions. I do believe that Gavin is a master of his words. He knows what he wants to put on the page, he studies how he wants to make you feel, and then he does it. I could feel every single impact of every single word that he wanted me to feel, and I think that that's extraordinary. However, even though his descriptions are brilliantly, beautifully done, they are not purple prose at all. They are raw and they don't shy away from what is actually going on. There are specific descriptions in this book of situations and of characters and developments going on that I don't want to spoil, that are indeed visceral, for a lack of a better term. And if you can't handle gore in your movies, books, your horror, then I wouldn't feel like this is for you. It is extremely descriptive, even though it's not the entirety of the book. It's only parts of the book, and it's there for a reason, so I don't at all feel that it's gratuitous violence. It is there. And so you should be warned that if that's not something that you want to read or even watch in your mind's eye, then this book is not for you. Also, and even though the beginning of this book already catches your attention and makes you want to still read it, I do believe that the best part of the book for me is the second half of it, without any shadow of a doubt. In the first half, we spend a lot of time getting to know our main character, getting to know the situations, and then the second half of it is like you're reading not a completely different story, but I do believe that in psychological terms, it's like you have reached the breaking point. There's a decision that is made, there's something that happens, and from that point on, you know that this is not going to be simple, that something is going down, and that you are going to love every minute of it, even though you might not agree with some of the situations. Also, if you ever thought about writing and being a writer, there are stuff here, scenes and things that are said that can and will possibly resonate a lot with you, because this is not only a psychological horror, but I do believe it's also a reflection on art, madness, and truth. And I absolutely love it. I am so happy that my friend Miguel told me you have to read this book, because he was 100% right. And I will leave his channel down below and his Goodreads down below, so you can go and see what books he reads. If you are interested in this book, he reads other amazing books. I will also leave Gavin's Instagram down below, so you can go and see his new releases and everything that he has to say about his books. But to sum up this, I just wanted to say that if you do enjoy psychological horror, if you don't mind having a bit of a gory description here and there, if you like well-built characters, if you like well-built pacing, if you like a nicely done narrative from beginning to end, you should read RYE. And what's the best month to actually read horror than October? And I'm saying this reading horror all year around, because the spooky season is sort of my life and I never wanted to finish. But you're in October, Halloween is in like, what, 2 weeks? Or 1 week? So pick this up. I mean it. I actually gave this 5 stars on Goodreads. I do think it's a compelling novel with which we can have a lot of reflections, with which we can have a lot of conversations. I do like the story, I do like the narration voice, and I think it's beautifully written, it's really well done, and that RYE deserves all of your attention. And if I haven't convinced you by now, I mean, I don't know what will. Maybe you reading it for yourself will convince you that this is awesome. I would like to read you the first sentence that, well, the first 2 sentences, 3, there's 3. Okay, that Gavin writes in this book. He says, "A brutal and distressing strain of horror has been poured into the pages of this novel. Anyone reading should take a moment to consider whether this is a depth into which they should dive. I believe it is. I do believe it is as well. And if you're not the least bit intrigued, I don't know what to tell you." Also, it has one of the most interesting introductions and first lines ever in existence, which I'm not going to quote to you because I think that will be an incentive for you to read this. I know, I'm terrible. Just do it. Just do it. That's going to be all for my review of RYE. I hope that you guys do consider picking it up, since I do believe it's one of the greatest psychological horrors that I have read so far. Not that I have read many of them, but I watch movies, I read horror, and I do really like this one. So if you like horror, if you haven't met Gavin yet, you should. His writing is amazing. And so for that reason alone, that's going to be all for today. I do hope you pick up the book if you know this book, or if you would like to talk a little bit more about it without spoilers for anyone that hasn't read it. Please tell me something in the comments down below, since I do love talking with you. And if you do have more horror recommendations for books that I should read, just tell me. I want more. I love horror, and I think I'll always love horror. So if you find great horror books, tell me. I always want to know. So that's going to be all for today, and happy readings to you all. Bye!